Welcome everyone to this second part of this event. I'm extremely excited to have these amazing women here on this panel. Rather than me introducing them, same as Antonia did, I would like for them to introduce themselves. Basically, I was thinking that, you know, each of you, if you can speak a few minutes about the work that you do, how have you come to work around prostitution or be an abolitionist activist, and yeah, basically your backgrounds. Yeah, is that okay?
My name is Sandra. I am a prostitution survivor from Germany. I spent 6 years in the sex trade of Germany, and okay. Okay. And I'm engaging since 2000. So I started in 2016 to write a blog in the internet to share my experiences, which I have experienced in prostitution, and then also I went publicly with my story, because in Germany we have also, I think in almost every country, a very strong pro-prostitution lobby, and you can read a lot of newspapers where you can read prostitution is sex work, it's empowering for women, it's the great liberation, and I really got sick of it, because I saw so many women who were suffering. Extreme violence is, not the right word, because it's more than extreme violence. It was torture for me and the women, and so that was very good what Rachel said before, that I'm also studying now, and I know these academics and students who have mostly in their life experienced not many things, instead of driving around with the car of their dad, and talking about prostitution as sex work on behalf of the women who have no voice. And I decided to start to speak out about my story, and I came to prostitution so when I was a minor. Man, you call this trafficker, a lover boy, recruited me into prostitution. These are men, and this strategy is very common in Germany, and it's kind of playing a love relationship, especially to young and vulnerable women, and to establish an emotional bond. And if this emotional bond exists, they want the women to go for them into prostitution, and say, for example, oh, I have debts, if you not help me to pay my debts, somebody will kill me and you will be responsible for this. And especially as a young woman, it's very easy to manipulate you in this way, especially when you have no stable home, when you have problems at home, when you want to leave your home. And so, have I reached 5 minutes?
I don't know, but I can listen to you forever.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, we can go on, I can speak later.
Sia, that's, I know a little bit of Hungarian. I just want to thank you guys for organizing this. It's very bold of you to do this, and just want to also encourage you to continue to do this. My name is Roëlla Lievelddel. I was born and raised most of my life in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. My parents are from Suriname, which was colonized by the Netherlands. And I think, well, the reason why I'm saying that as well is because I think we also need to look at the relations, as Julie earlier said, between prostitution and colonization and slavery, because it's very intertwined. I have worked with prostituted women for about 13, 14 years now, and doing mostly frontline services, but also working with law enforcement. And since the last year and a half, 2 years, we are really focusing on working together with businesses to empower prostituted women, to give them the tools that they need to go beyond the sex trade, because you know, most women that are in the sex trade are poor and marginalized women, and did not have the opportunity to get a proper education, or due to different circumstances, family situations, you name it. We believe in equality, and we believe that everybody has the right to education and to be able to thrive and enjoy life while we're here on Earth. And as long as we condone these laws and these behaviors that oppress women within the sex trade, I don't think we can see that equality. So we have different programs that we run in the Netherlands, and we also work with different Eastern European countries. We work a lot with Moldova, Bulgaria, Romania, and we hope to also make you know, connections with you awesome people here, because what we have seen within our NGO is that there is also a large group of Hungarian women. This is my first time visiting Hungary, and it's a beautiful country. However, what surprised me is that what I know of the Hungarian people in the Netherlands is the view or the perspective that I had is a little bit different from what I'm experiencing here in Budapest, because most of the Hungarian women that we encounter are from a Roma background. Yeah, it's I've heard also about your lovely food, so I have to bring a lot of chocolate back home. What is it called again? Turarudi. I think that's something that is enjoyed here. Yeah, and that's who I am.
So thank you for you both doing the introduction. I'm so excited. Can you hear me? I'm so excited to speak here because I'm Marie from Germany. My activism really started mainly because of the Roma women I met in the brothels. After I entered prostitution in my 40s out of financial, economical desperation. And what I saw in the brothels were extremely young women, extremely scared young women, and all of them were Roma girls, no women, girls, really girls. After I exited, I found a job, I lost the job, and only after I lost this job, I felt what prostitution did to me, how harmful it is. Because the time I entered prostitution, I thought, okay, great thing, I can save myself, I don't find a job, so now I can save myself. But after I lost the job, I felt what it did to me, I fell into a deep depression, and I reached out for help. I wanted to find help, and I couldn't find in my county. There were nothing. We have huge brothels there, around about 5 huge brothels, several smaller brothels, and everywhere in there are these over 90% young women, Roma women. And I couldn't find help, and I thought, if I couldn't find help, so how can they get help? How can they find help? So my desperation, my depression, in that moment it was great, turned into anger, and I reached out on the internet for information about prostitution, about these women. And so I used this one. So if I cannot find help, these women cannot find help. So I reached out for information on the internet about prostitution and ended up in several forums and places where intellectuals, German left liberals, were discussing the topic. I was like, what? You're saying it's empowering? I only saw discouraged young women full of fear, without any chance of help, with no one to reach out, with no one who takes care of them, even and recognizes them. So I started to write on these forums, and then journalists reached out to me, Alice Schwarzer from the Emma magazine, and did an interview with me. And someone asked me, are you willing to talk on a panel? I was very naive, I said, yes, I will do. So on that panel, I met Rachel, and she asked me to join Space, the survivor of prostitution, abuse, calling for enlightenment. And from that time on, I slipped into being an activist. And my main goal is really to start my own NGO to offer real exit services. Because right at the moment the situation is like that. The women get just basic helps. If they get any help, it's just basic, like getting a German course that they can basically talk German. And then they get jobs like roommates or cleaner or something, and basic housing. But in my opinion, these girls and women deserve a lot more. They deserve options, they deserve education, they deserve to have a perspective for their life, to be someone to build their skills. And it's the responsibility of our society to give it to them, because we abuse them in Germany in the system of prostitution to comfort the men of our society, which do not care about these women. They're just cheap. You know, they start with 10 euro and they have to pay 150 euro to pay the room in the brothel where they have to live in, because they cannot afford, of course, they cannot afford to pay a rent of 500 euro, which is normal for one room. So they are living in the brothels. And sorry. So I want to provide better help to the women exiting and better options, that they can develop their skills, that they get a real education, and that they get a perspective. And I just wanted to tell you some numbers, because I think that's very important, because the Roma are really the women of color in Germany and in Europe. They represent more than 90% in the brothels. This is not an official number, but you can ask anyone who's working with the women, who's doing exiting services and reach outs, and you just can have a look on the galleries of the brothels on the internet, and you barely find a white woman there. Almost 100% are women from Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. So we really have to talk about inner European racism too, because the men are pretty aware what they are doing. They're talking about these women like Romulan fucking pigs on their forums. They really do not respect them in any way. So I think we have to name that. And we have to name too the economical inequality between the countries of the European Union, because that's a big issue which helps to get people trafficked into the richer countries. I think it's a huge problem, and I don't have a solution for that. The only solution I have for the prostitution issue is just to do not allow men to lift their racism and their misogyny on women in prostitution. So we have to cut off this and say buying, abusing a woman is just not allowed. We don't want that, because I want a society who says it's not acceptable in any way that someone is buying the access to the orifices of a woman. So I want that we internalize it, that we say it's, you do not murder anyone, you do not beat up anyone. That's a very clear thing, we do not do that. Some people do that, but it's not okay. So I want that we are thinking about prostitution in that way. It's not okay to buy the access to abuse women.
My name is Judith Bari, and actually I'm working for the gender issue maybe since 2 decades. And the first time when I met with the Roma women prostitution, it was 6-7 years ago. I was working for the Malta Charity Foundation, and I had to go for different places of the country. I went to Northeast Hungary because my job was to write a kind of background studies for their fundraising. So, and I met their women who are living from prostitution, and I had to find out that they are doing very cheap services, let's say, and they are usually mothers, and they are pinned by their brothers or their husbands, which is really shocking for me. And when I realized this, I actually asked the Malta Foundation to do something against this, because they are usually working with their children, you know, doing Tanoda program, like after-school education programs, but they didn't have capacity to deal with this issue at all. Not even the region is not dealing with this issue. And I thought I need to do something, at least to listen to this woman. And I organized firstly a workshop about their identity as a woman. So I started to approach them from those angles which is not so painful for them, you know, explore what is being a woman, and what is being a woman in the Roma community, what is being a woman in the family. So, and I find a lot of, how to say, like very deep, serious issues, even about the opinion about themselves. So they were so much misled, and they didn't, how to say, like, they didn't have any idea about their ownership about the woman, their mind, you know, their perspectives, you know. And I had to do some individual interviews because some of the issues got silent because, you know, in front of each other they didn't speak seriously on each topic. And so they agreed to do some individual interviews, and I had to find that almost all of the women, regardless of their age, some part of their life, they were prostituted. So each of the region are somehow involved in this so-called business because, you know, they live by this. And I have to say that most of the women, when they got enrolled into the prostitution, they were under 18. So even they were mothers and they have more children, when they started this, they were under 18. That is very important. We have to acknowledge this. And actually, they were very thankful for being kind of a listener for them, because usually people think I'm very good active listener, and this situation made me somehow stronger in a situation that nobody's listened to them. And they were very thankful, and they were saying this, that thanks for asking and thanks for listening, because I never heard this loudly, even by my own words. And let's say the main issue which I find out that there is no way to quit, and some of the men, because I did interviews with men as well, some of the men told me that they were very proud of the history of this community, because many years ago, decades ago, they were the providers of the Rákóczi Square prostitution as well. They are more than 200 kilometers far from Budapest. So can you imagine how long they are in this kind of business? And how how long these women by generations are oppressed. And that's why they have internalized this kind of identity of a woman can be self, your body is not your body, but they cannot speak about this. Even they don't have a words for this to express what they feel as a woman. And so some of the women also part of the pimping structure, because maybe they protect their own families, their own girls, but they are very, very motivated to involve cousins, those who are low status of the community. So let's say I find the hierarchy within this community as well. So there are some who are more vulnerable, there are some who are oppressing the others. And I was thinking so much because it was not framed with some project or these things, what I can do with these interviews and with the knowledge I received from this community. And I decided to find some fund, and I engaged the Malta Foundation to do some project, finally, which they didn't follow up until the end of the project, so I have to find other partners. They got the money, but I got the task, and I left Malta because of this project, because they didn't support so much. And so I find a theater, a social theater, and I was thinking to use these interviews as a narrative, because we don't know their stories, and this is a kind of treasure in my hand. And I find Balázs Simon, he's a theater director, and very open for Roma, and very open for social issues. But actually, he was also believe in sex work, which I didn't know. But that was not a bad thing, let's say, at the end, because I sent the interviews for him, and he wrote me back that these interviews entirely changed my life and changed my perspective about women at all. And he became the biggest supporter about vanishing the sex work or not to think about women as a subject, because he felt like he's also guilty because he didn't know that such situations exist for the Hungarian women in villages, because he's also working with Roma children in Northeast Hungary doing social theaters, and he never find out probably their mothers are suffering from this issue. So that was very shocking for him, and we started a 3 years work together. I mean, we went to orphanage places, we went to juvenile prisons, we went to schools, and we did a kind of, let's say, social theater with these narratives. And we developed many characters based on these stories, and actually our actors and actresses are so much involved deeply, because they got to know the interviews. We discussed how they can develop their character. We invited one psychologist to help them to find out what is the best way to somehow display this kind of characters. And in this way, we had a lot of tools in our hands when we went to places, and we had to, we didn't afraid to face with new situations, because we had the real and full characters, and they can play any situation in any circumstances. And but they were crying a lot, because this situation was very new for them as well. And during 3 years, we developed a kind of play called You Are the King. That was the title of this play. And this we used not only for kind of highlighting the situation about the mothers and women in Roma communities, but also we find new issues like drug and how to deal with deep poverty, but I wouldn't make deep conversation about this. And during these 3 years, I did new interviews with orphanage young girls, and also those who are living in a juvenile prison. And so with all the impulsion, all the new knowledge, all the new interviews, I realized that I need to write a role play, a playwright, which is going to bring this kind of issue to different status of the society, because nobody is coming to this social theater, and they are not following us to come to schools and places with us and orphanage places, but they can be invited to the theater. you know. I was a playwright about a runaway young girl, and she's runaway with her newborn baby, and all the calvary she gets through, it's in this play, and it's called Disadvantaged Angels. This is not a full title, but I would say in English that is a Disadvantaged Angels. Angels, I mean the girls and the babies who are very innocent, and they are abused, not only by men but also by the system itself. And this play went for 3 years, I think, in different theaters in Hungary. And when it was in the year of the premiere, it was listed as the one of the most important drama in the country. So even this title, even this recognition was very hard to involve, very hard to recruit enough audience, because they were really afraid from the topic itself. We find out when they came, they got shocked and they felt guilty and they felt responsible, but they didn't know what to do about this. And because of this, we had to find a different way of processing, and we always had to discuss with the audience after the play. And last year, I think the Katona József Theatre also involved in his program. It's a kind of became an educational tool for them. So that's, and one sentence of why I against the sex work narrative, because I realized that the situation they are in is totally beyond their control. So how they can decide about themselves when all the risk factors which are making them like a potential victim of prostitution, they cannot control it. So they even didn't understand the situation they are in. So how they can decide consciously about, I'm going to live for my body and get rich, so they cannot get to this point at all. So, and actually this is unethical to support the sex worker narratives. Totally unethical. Anyhow, they are educated or not educated, this is unethical. Even the women saying by themselves, they are decided it's not true. We should listen their stories behind why they can decide to separate themselves from their own body.
Thank you so much for everything you said. I think perhaps it would be interesting to know from our guests. You are all from countries where prostitution has been decriminalized or legalized, and I was wondering what you saw, what kind of effect have you seen that this has had in the sex trade in your countries, and especially in terms of Central Eastern European women's trade to your countries. So how did it change? We all know that it increased, but beyond that, in a bit more detail, what have you seen?
What I have seen was what Marie already mentioned, that over 90%, so I would say in my case 99%, were not German women, but most of the times women from Hungary, from Bulgaria and from Romania. And you know, I want to talk a little bit about how I think that legalized or decriminalized systems, what this is doing with the woman and how it pushes especially young women into prostitution. So my trafficker, for example, used the law, you know, for pushing me into prostitution. Because, you know, when I was the first time in the brothel with him, so, you know, I got to know him in the internet, and there was this, you know, development of a relationship, and then a few months later he brought me the first time into a brothel, and I asked him, what are we doing here, And he said, oh, we are just drinking coffee, what's your problem? It's brothel owners are businessmen, this is sex work, everything is legal, so why are you worrying? You should not judge the people who are working here. And so this was a very good strategy, to try to trivialize it, to normalize it like our state does it, and to tell you that you are the problem, not the prostitution is the problem. So if you don't want to go into it, so you are not right, And so I grow into this, I don't start with prostitution, but I went with him into these brothels, I got to know this life more and more, and it really got kind of normal, when you go in there a few weeks, every time it's the first time I got into this and I saw the women, with the high heels, naked, I saw these men. It was a very scary atmosphere, but you are really growing into this. And so then, he asked me one time, don't you want to do this too? And I said, no, of course I don't want to do this. And then he started, with the steps, and if you love somebody, you are doing work, and if sex work is work, and actually when you are in a normal relationship and your partner has a crisis, there is no money, you are helping him, and if sex work is work, so why you should not work, and there is also one very good thing another survivor in Spain I know mentioned, and she said, or she told a story, and she said, oh, a man offered me 100 euro, and he said, you get this 100 euro when you suck my dick, and she was not anymore in prostitution, it happened outside, and she said, you will call this now sexual harassment, when prostitution is called sex work, this is a job offer, and you have to think this far what this legalization is doing, and it very pushes women into prostitution because they get internalized, that they have to endure this. And this is also one thing I have said one time, suffering violence weakens body and soul. But suffering violence that is not actually recognized as violence as it is in a legal system because it's called work, it weakens body and soul even more because you convince yourself that you have to endure things that a normal human being actually cannot stand, And so this is very dangerous. And it's very dangerous because prostitution is not destroying most of the times after the 100 sex buyer or the 100 punter, it in most of the times destroys after the first time, because you experience unwanted sex, and this is traumatizing for a young person. So in legalized systems, the state is not warning about the harms of prostitution, even if we have a lot of studies that say this is violence. A lot of women, want to end their lives. They are suicidal. They have post-traumatic stress disorder. You are not warned about this, and it's very easy then to enter because you think, oh, I can try it. But if you have tried it, then it's often too late after the first time. And I know, for example, a lot of women who were trafficked into prostitution, forced into prostitution, and after they get rid of their trafficker, they stayed in prostitution, and people don't understand this. But they stay because they are broken, because it does something to you. It's not just like, going to supermarket and changing to another supermarket. And this is you know, what people sometimes think, why do you not stop, you know, if you don't like it? Because, you know, your dignity was taken away. You think you have no worth. You don't feel like a human being, and in this kind of when you're in this situation, it's not easy to exit, even if you have no pimp. So I really want just one thing to mention, because people always talk about trafficking and forced prostitution, but they don't see the act of prostitution. What is happening, you know, behind these walls with the punters, you know. And it does not matter if you are trafficked in there, if you are there by free choice, whatever free choice means. What the punters are doing to the women, and I'm not only speaking about my own experience, but I spend a lot of time together with other women, with punters. I saw what was done to them, and this was always a huge violation of human dignity. So,
within the Netherlands, prostitution has always been condoned. And it has been condoned specifically at first in what we call the Golden Ages, or the 17th century, because of poor women around by the Christian church. And so Amsterdam was built around this old church by the harbor, and that is currently also where our red light district is. And around the church right now, the red light district is also built up or divided by race, we see. And at that specific church also, around it is a circle, and there you find mostly African women or Afro-Caribbean women. And then you have a little alleyway also, we call it the Molensteeg, and that's where you have mostly Roma Hungarian women. So what we've seen by legalizing brothel keeping and legalizing the system of prostitution within the Netherlands is that it has also institutionalized racism. Not only that, it has brought a lot of tourists over to come and see, to come and view. And I have heard of women say to me, you know, I would rather be working in a club or whatever than stand behind the window, because people treat the women behind the window like animals. They get cussed at, they get human feces thrown at them. And you know, we have tried within the Netherlands to come up with so many different rules and little changes, and try to change little details within the laws to try to make it better. For example, we have panic buttons in the room, and so in case of violence and you need to call the police. And till this day, I have not met a woman who works or who is behind the window that is has not experienced violence. As a matter of fact, the Pro Lobby has put out this report to help support their narrative that sex work is work. And they have said that 90 to 97% of women within the legalized prostitution system within the Netherlands experience violence on a daily basis, which to me actually proves that legalizing the system also does not prevent violence against women. As a matter of fact, I feel like it has increased. And then I also think we have to really look at the way the liberal left is pushing it forward, and the media is pushing this forward, and the music industry is pushing this forward, to where now the narrative has become that brothel owners and pimps literally go to universities to recruit students. And they say, well, this is a way for you to be able to pay off your student loan, because sex work is work. So it's just like anything else. So I do not think that legalizing the system of prostitution improves the safety or the lives of women within the sex trade.
Thank you. And it doesn't protect the lives of women outside the sex trade. It harms really, literally, every woman in the society where legal prostitution is established. What I can see in German prostitution is the so-called, or themselves calling sex workers. They are really a minority, of course, because over 90% of the women in prostitution are not Germans. They are, in fact, Roma. They are in completely denial of that fact. They say, oh yeah, there are a few of them. On the other hand, they say, it's a market and it works like any other market. So that means if you have goods and you have a lot of the goods, they are available anytime in any amount. It means they have no value. They have a low price and they are not valued. It's just cheap. So the so-called sex work lobby is, on the one hand they say, oh, it's just a minority. On the other hand they say they destroy our business. Just to say that. That's the way they treat them. And what I can see in legalization, everything you see, everything you told, that's a fact. How to say, I met a lot of punters too, like all of you, and what I can see, they don't have respect for any women. They don't have respect for their wives. They are discussing on their forums, like, yeah, you know, now we have to use condoms. That's part of the new law in Germany, and the security button, emergency button too. So they're discussing it like, okay, we have to use condoms in prostitution, but marriage is nothing else. So how will they control if we use a condom with our wives? Just to show you how they are thinking about women in general. So in legalization, society is badly affected, and mostly women are affected by this, because it changes the relationship between men and women in this society, and it changes how young people grow up, and it changes their relationship. It changes their relationship with their own bodies. It changes the relationship with other persons, in between girls and boys, men and women. So the worst thing I can say, and which is really my drive to be an activist, is just these really young girls, as she said. A lot of them are underage, some of them just 12, 13, 14, but a lot of them have real, not faked passports with the age of 18 on it, because that's the age you need to have to work in Germany, or work, it's not work, just to stay in prostitution in Germany. And they get them because they are coming from communities. Some of them don't have a birth certification. So an uncle, a brother, a father is going to the city hall and getting the papers for them and saying, yeah, she's 18. And nobody in Germany really wants to find out if they're really 18. They have a real passport on it which is written 18, so it's okay. And I really feel heartbroken if I think of these girls, because they are so young. They really should experience their own sexuality with someone who loves them, and not an old sweating German man, which really is not respecting them. They're calling them fucking pigs. And they know that they can get almost everything from these girls, because, as I said, it's a market, an economical market which works like any other market. That sounds very rude, but that's a fact. That means the girls have to do almost everything the men who are buying access to their body to abuse them are asking them they will do. Do it without a condom, I give you €5 more. They will do it. I will come in your face, they do it. I will fuck you from behind, they do it. For just a few euros more, because they have no other choice. Because they are an unvalued good. They are not human. They are dehumanized. So that's just all I can say. Women are dehumanized in the system of prostitution. It's beyond dignity. And I only can say we have to change our attitude, and this attitude can be changed by the Nordic model, where the buying of sex, as it's called in this law, is not okay, is penalized, will be sued. So that's my opinion about that. And about dignity. Our idea of dignity in Europe is a lot based on the philosophy and the philosopher Immanuel Kant. And most people don't think much about dignity. The First Amendment of the German Constitution is that dignity is untouchable, and nobody's dignity can be taken away by anybody and will be protected. That's the First Amendment of the German Constitution, just to say. But the sex worker lobby, they say, it's my choice, it's my dignity. No, dignity is not a choice. You can be proud of something. That's your idea and your choice. But dignity is not something you can define yourself. It's defined. And so there's a quote of Immanuel Kant I want to give you as the end of this part to explain you what's meant by dignity. In the kingdom of ends, everything has either a price or a dignity. What has a price can be replaced by something else as its equivalent. What, on the other hand, is raised above all price and therefore admits of no equivalent has a dignity. And he also says that if someone's taking the dignity of another person away from this person, he's throwing away in the same time his own dignity. He's losing his dignity too. So it's an issue, you know. We have men without dignity because they're taking away the dignity of vulnerable women and girls.
You have questions?
Yeah, to you I wanted to ask a little bit of a different question then from...
Okay, I would maybe add something about this question and give it back to my phone. So what I would say, I would demonstrate with some cases that how easy to exploit the women, the girls, and to say, and can demonstrate that why is it so dangerous to legalize prostitution in that way when we call it sex work. One of the girls from a juvenile, let's say prison, during the interview, she was telling me that she's there because she is very easily influenced. And I asked, what do you mean about this? And she told me that I had a boyfriend and he sold me for 6,000 forint for 2 other young boys. And they told me after that he sold me. And she was asking me, do you think I can worth such amount of money? So she couldn't define herself worth more than 6,000 for it. So this is very shocking. So very easy to convince this woman that for money you can do a lot. And other things to say that, I wanted to do an interview with the sex women who are protected by this association, and I called the leader of this organization, and she told me, maybe I don't know if someone is coming from this organization, but she told me.
Sorry, this is just to say that this is the Hungarian sex worker narrative.
The only advocate association for them. And she was telling to me, okay, and such amount of money you have to pay for them by us. And I told them, I don't want to buy them. I don't want to pay for them for interviews. And she told me, okay, because you're coming from the Malta, because that time I was working for the Malta, she told me, maybe you can get some fund from them. And I told her, I don't have a power to get fund from the Malta for you. And she told me, okay, maybe we can have some interviews, but I have to be there. So these women cannot speak to me by themselves, so she had to be there. And the only things which I could do, to do an interview with her, without any other woman. So, and the other thing is that I wanted to do an interview with the woman, the gynecologist woman, who is providing the health certificate for this woman, that because we have a law for this, because actually we have a kind of half legalized prostitution law here. And I called this woman and she was agreed to talk to me, and after a few days when I called again to speak to her, she told me that she denied. Even she was agreed at the first place, because the leader of the sector told her she cannot speak to me. So that's how they are free and they can choose by themselves, and that's how they freely can decide about themselves. So this very clearly demonstrates that such organizations which are advocate for the liberalization, they also oppress them. So they really work, kind of a character of the pimp. So I cannot say that they are different than the pimps. And what I would say for the law itself, like the underage prostitute, many times catched, because we have a law that there is no, how to say, there are several places you cannot do prostitution, but prostitution is allowed, but there are several places you cannot do. Actually, you cannot do anywhere other practice, because they always get you and they always find, and how to say, they have to pay some amount of fee, and they never find the client who buying them. Even this is a law which is saying they have to punish them. So if they catch the woman doing prostitution, how they cannot catch the man who is buying the prostitution? It's never had the case. They find anyone who can be like demonstrating that they force this law.
Thank you so much.
May I add?
Yeah, may I add something, because that's really important to know that a lot of the women get ill because the men don't care for them, and that's really important, because we have now that 60% of the girls have the STI in the eyes, they have PUP in their throats, and they have all the STIs you normally get on the other ways, in their eyes, in their noses, in their throats, and the men don't care because you cannot get infected if you do a blowjob. And a lot of the girls which are pimped by their brothers and fathers, as you said, are not allowed to see a doctor. So that's something I've seen, and I think that's really shocking. One person of the health government told me 60% of the girls in Stuttgart, which is a huge city, have these infections in the head area, just to call it like that.
I'm very conscious of the time, because I will want to leave enough time for questions at the end. So I will skip ahead to one of the questions that I'm very curious about. Why do you think that in spite of these realities that you're describing, the sex work narrative is still so successful? And what do you think can be done to turn that around, other than what we're trying to do all the time, telling the truth, telling the truth, telling the truth? You know, what kind of practical strategies or ideas do you think might have turned this around?
So I think that events like this event today is very important. Educating people and educating young people especially is very important, because we see it also in Germany. You know, when you grow up in a culture like this, where all is trivialized, where all is normal, you know, they have it, you know, they think it's okay, you know, they think it's normal, they just read reports in the media. Okay, that changed, you know. There are also now a lot of reports in the media that are talking about the violence, and but this is just because people and survivors speak about it, you know, and I see it especially with young girls and boys. When I go, for example, to schools, you would not think that they are thinking about so much about the prostitution issue, because in most of the times they have not so many contact to prostitution, but the reality is that everybody of them has contact to prostitution and is confronted with it, because you know, I went to schools and for example, I enlighten about lover boys, but also about prostitution. You know, it's at the first time I prepared speeches, but now I realize that they don't want to hear speeches. You know, they are hungry, you know, to discuss the issue, to ask questions, so that's why I go inside and I say to them, okay, I will talk a little bit about these things, but when you have questions, you can ask me, you know. And I'm just talking, you know, 10 minutes. My speech is actually 1 hour, but I'm just talking 10 minutes, you know. And there are so many questions where they have no person where they can really talk about it. Because, you know, people are, for example, shy, ashamed to talk about it. They don't know what it's like, you know. If I have not been in prostitution, I would also not know, you know, what it's about. So I think it's really important to educate the people who are growing up and who will build this society one time, and yeah, to invite survivors that speak to the people and that are telling about how their experience was in prostitution. And yeah, you ask why the sex work lobby is so strong, you know. I mean, punters are everywhere, you know. This is one thing. The men that came into the brothels and abused us, these were men from the whole society. It was not just a man from this kind of society or this kind, were all kinds of men, and almost married, in a relationship, where when you see them on the street, would not think about that they are going into a brothel and abusing a woman, and then after it going back home, you know, kissing their child and laying into bed. So they are everywhere, and they of course don't want the Nordic model, you know, because then they would not be allowed anymore to buy the sexual access to a woman's body. And what I also know is that organized crime is very involved in everything. They have contacts to people who are in a high position. They have money, you know. So I think these are 2 points why sex work lobby is strong, because of the punters, because of all the people who profit from it, and it's a lot of money. And one police officer that wrote books about organized crime and prostitution and everything, he said, you know, trafficking and prostitution is not only something where you can earn a lot of money. You can earn a lot of money in a very easy way, because when you, for example, deal with drugs, you have to first give money and then get the drugs, you know. But if you recruit a woman, for example, like my trafficker recruited me, you don't have to put money in that, you know. You just get money. So this is very lucrative, and the people know this, yeah.
I think I also want to make clear that I'm not sitting here saying that sex is wrong or sex is bad. Sex within a consenting relationship is actually a very good thing. However, you know, the buying for access to a woman's body, that's what we're talking about. And the reasons why I think also the sex industry is really thriving and has been thriving within the Netherlands is, or the pro lobby, is because we even within family structures, where it begins in relationships, we just have to be honest with one another about the unhealthy relationships that we sometimes have. So I think that needs to also be addressed, and with that also comes the porn industry. The reasons why these industries are so thriving is because there is a high demand. And if there's a high demand for something, that means that not only the liberal left is partaking in that, but also the right conservatives are partaking in that. And I think we have to be honest about that, about the demand, and we have to talk about the demand as well. Our NGO specifically focuses also on empowering survivors. And one thing I do think that we should not do is arrest women, is criminalize the women that are involved or the people that are involved within the sex trade, and really try to figure out a holistic approach, in a sense, build a community, find your allies across the world, across the globe, within your own city. Start there, find allies with politicians, with artists, within the media, and then educate them and share the stories of survivors and their experiences, so that they can also get a different side of what has been promoted through the media.
Yeah, I think we have to work on different levels, as you said. One thing for sure we have to do is educating and assisting the youth, because it's not only educating. I do these workshops with young people in between 16 and 22, and what I can feel is that it confuses themselves in growing up and growing in their own sexuality and the connection to their own bodies in this system of legalized prostitution. Pornography gets normalized by that way too. And if something is just a good you can buy, and if something is just minimized to be just buyable, so come on, why are you afraid to have your first blowjob? Even in German magazines for teenage girls, they give advice how to do a good blowjob. So I think we have to educate them, because I found out they don't know anything or not much about prostitution, as you said, because it's normalized and it confuses themselves. We have to assist them to deal with it and to find a way to put it in, to get themselves connected to themselves and not seeing themselves in the context of all this hypersexualization. Because I think sexuality is something beautiful, and it shouldn't be a good that's be sold and be minimized to something that's sold. Another way, I think, is to just take away the taxes. The government, the state of Germany, just talking in behalf of Germany, they shouldn't get any taxes anymore. Because each and every woman, if she is a German or not, has to pay a daily rate of taxes that is around about 25 to 35 euro a day. And these are going directly to the German state. And out of this money they made, I think it was in 2014, they made out of the taxes they got from all this prostitution system, they made the calculation how much money was earned in that market. And it was about 15 billion, right? 15 million euro. So 50 million euro, which were earned in total, means round about 5 million euro the German state earned just by that. So I think that's a huge drive, you know, because that's an income for the state, and we should take away all the taxes from all this trading, because then there will be one drive will be gone. Because all the registrations they do just right now in Germany of the women, which should help them to be safer, is just to get everyone registered to pay the taxes, in my opinion. So that's one thing I think we have to do. And of course, we have to teach our own society that nobody should buy the access to a body of another person and to women. So that means, how do we teach ourselves how we are making the rules, how we want to deal with each other and build our relationships? We do that with laws. So I think we should implement the Nordic model, and we should implement that for the whole European Union.
I will say a bit about the Hungarian situation, because I'd say like in Hungary there's not enough testimony from people who were in prostitution. So that's why it's very hard to convince people about how realistic this and the other things that I think when we go against sex work and all the entire system, we go against the status quo. That's, I think, we should never forget this, because also decision makers are mostly men, and also, you know, who are benefit from this, even with money, mostly men. And I'm not speaking against men. I just speak about the structure of the society we are living in, and how to say, like. Legalizing prostitution, for me, it also means that these men, these buyers, we make them easily escape from being a criminal, because the act they are doing out of this frame, it's a criminal act. If they're doing not paying for and doing not for prostitute, you know, they are doing some crime. So in this way, if we legalize the prostitution fully, it means that these men are escaping prison very easily, just pay some money for it. So another situation in this, you know, societies also always tend to approach things from economical point of view, and it's mean like, because so much money is involved in this system, they think it's like a gray area of the economy. So, and this they want to whitening. And what is the, you know, approach for whitening something? It's, you know, get ownership over this. And I mean that it's mean that we make a government being a pimp if we use such kind of approach for sex work or for prostitution. So I'm totally against this, because I don't want my government to be a pimp, and I don't want, how to say, like criminals being freely escaped just because they pay some money for it.
Okay.
Yeah. I just want to to point one thing out, because we are in Hungary now. And I think you just have to realize that your girls and women are exploited in the destination country of Germany, you know. It's also German women, but we have an estimated number of between 200,000 and 1 million people who are in prostitution, and a huge number of this are women and girls of your country. And so I think this is really important that you get organized and that you are doing this event and that you are protest against it in your country, but also that, you know, that I'm really ashamed, you know, I'm German and I'm sitting here, you know, and I really have to cry, you know, because you know, I actually avoid to tell some stories, you know, of the women I met. But but you really have to know this. So I want to tell you one story of an Hungarian woman I met in prostitution. And she was not a young girl, because we are always talking about young girls, but it's not only young girls that are in prostitution. And she was almost 40, I think, and she has a very bad life, and she was like a mother for me, you know. She cooked for me, and she know my situation. And one time, you know, a sex buyer said he wants to give us marijuana, and the Romanian women said it's okay, you get relaxed of that, you get calm because of that, you can't smoke it, you know. But it was no marijuana, it was heroin with something mixed with toxic, you know. And these Hungarian women, she sat the whole night, you know, holding my hand and caring about me, you know. And one evening she came to me, and I was very desperate. I was crying, you know, because I saw no hope to get out of this situation. And she said to me, "Sandra, believe me, one time you will have a better life than me, you know." And it was that she had almost given up herself. And a few weeks later, she died, you know. She got pills, you know, because she was not able to endure all of this. And she had a lot of panic attacks, and she was drinking alcohol and a lot of drugs. So she died, you know. And the German state is responsible also for that. And you really should know this, and you should really go against this, because what's happening there, this is really a murder of souls, you know. And even if the prostituted women will come out physically, most of them will not come out mentally. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
I commend my brave, very brave space sisters in their truth-telling, in their advocacy for other women, even in the face of what you yourselves have endured. And for you to bring the message to all of these women in Hungary, you are exactly what all women need everywhere, your message. What you've shared with us this evening is nothing short of life-changing for some of these women here. To hear and to your willingness to share what you've endured. I love each and every one of you.
If there's another question, I want to say something.
Okay, sure.
This was no topic right here, but I want to talk about voluntarily entering prostitution as an option, because I entered prostitution voluntarily. But how voluntarily is it if there are no options? I was in my 40s and I couldn't find a job, really, literally for years, because of my age. So I hadn't had options. I felt like a mouse in a trap, and the word to open this trap was work. And then I had the idea, okay, why not? As she said, it's work like any other. Why not take this option to improve my situation? But you know, if you don't have any other options, it's not an option. It's just the last thing you think you can do. And my depression, in fact, started after I lost the job I had, after I exited prostitution. I exited prostitution because of that job, because I lost the job, and then I thought, okay, again prostitution. And it was like each and every cell in my body, it was not my brain, it was my body, each and every cell was like, no, no. And then I was like, oh no, what shall I do? Because I felt it's not an option if it's the last option. So really think about how voluntary can be prostitution. Each and every woman I know from the pro-sex work lobby, and I know some of them in Germany, from the time I've been in prostitution, and the stories they told me are mostly a little bit different of the stories they tell if they are in public. So just keep in mind how voluntary can be prostitution. And I was an open person, I lived my sexuality very freely, but for me it was like a huge step to make the decision to enter prostitution. Even I thought, okay, it's a job like any other, nothing more like than a one-night stand, but it felt like a huge step to make inside myself. I really felt it physically. Something changed, and that there's no way back. And it's true, there's no way back. Even if you are 1 day or 2 days in prostitution or just a week, it changes your life and it harms you. It harms every woman.
Any questions? Yeah.
So I want to ask you about these new ways of grooming young women. For instance, these sugar dating sites. We also had a story with this in Hungary. Or online camgirling, or all these types of new ways of selling this as some type of romantic thing, or
Girlfriend sex.
girlfriend experience. There was a chapter about this in Julie's book that was very interesting, and how it is actually even worse because it's a constant state of fear for the woman, not just for that couple of hours, but for a long period of time. So I don't know what my question is, but basically it's just that there's so many forms of prostitution that we don't always think about, and how you get in contact with these types of things in your field.
So, you know, these sugar daddies, I saw some videos, you know, where the women try to say it's not prostitution, you know, it's something else, but it is prostitution. It's prostitution, like escort is also prostitution, and I really have to say, and I heard also other survivors talking about this, it's more damaging to be constant with a punter than having them just for 1 hour and then go away, because it's emotionally. For example, you know, I was in different kind of brothels, and I did also an escort. And in Germany now, flat rate brothels are forbidden. Flat rate brothels, where for example, the punter paid €140 to the brothel owner, and then the brothel owner got €70, and the other €70. The women got the other €70. So when the punter used, for example, or not used, yeah, abused, for example, 7 women, you have to divide 70, so everyone gets €10. So, but I really have to say that everything was painful and everything hurt, you know. But I knew when I go in, you know, maybe I drink alcohol, you know, so that I will not get hurt so much. Or this is not possible when you have to spend time, you know, with someone 10 hours, and when you see him always and always again. And I had also punters who fell in love with me. Of course, they don't fall in love with me, you know, they just wanted, you know, to use my body, but they said they fell in love with me, and they came very often. And this damaged me a lot, you know, because you not only have to give the sex when you want to call it sex, but you have to give more, you know, you have to give more, and this is so I think it's a real problem, you know, to talk about sugar daddies as something less problematic than prostitution. It's the same, you know, and for a lot of women I know and who tell their stories, it was often more damaging, as I said, just spending more time, just seeing the man again and again, because you cannot forget it. Yeah.
I want to say, if you want to say something about the girlfriend experience. As I entered prostitution, it's not so long time ago, it was quite common that even for half an hour the men expect the girlfriend's experience. You all heard about dissociation, the mechanism where it's like if you're at the dentist, think on someone else, something else, you just think yourself away. That's, if you're in prostitution, it's helpful to protect yourself, that you do not feel it completely. If you're doing the girlfriend's experience, you're not able to dissociate and think yourself away, because you always have to interact and react, and you always have to be there. I found that very, very hard, because I felt everything. Sometimes I really felt like I had to vomit, and you have to fight this. You're feeling literally how your boundaries and your body is penetrated, not only physically, emotionally, and psychological. So that's, I think it's a real damaging thing, and it's just the same with the sugar daddy thing, because the girls have to say it's not prostitution, and they enjoy it, because they cannot stand it if they don't convince themselves about that. But I think it makes it, as she said, very, very damaging.
Are there any more questions from the audience? Because I have a question. So if there aren't, are there? No, I will ask it then. There is a hand. Yay!
Guys, it was really nice to hear everyone talk about their experiences. I just wanted to say I came here with the ideology that, you know, if you wanted to get into sex work, that was your priority. It was your body, and you could do whatever you want to do with it. So listening to every single one of you speak, I have to say that I've changed my mind. Like, there's no way I can. There's no way I can sit down and listen to each and every one of you talk about what you've been through and still think it's okay for people to go through that. So that's my comment. About my question. So I wanted to ask you and Diego, you mentioned the intersection between race and sex work, especially in Netherlands. So I just want you to kind of go more into that. Do you think that there's more discrimination against women of color during sex work in Netherlands, or even in general, if you guys have any other ideas?
Thanks so much.
What's your name?
My name is Ola.
Ola, thank you, Ola.
No worries.
Yes, definitely. You know, the Netherlands has a long history of slavery and colonization. As I mentioned in the beginning, you know, my roots lay in Suriname, and then when you look centuries ago, we might even share the same roots. And that has translated even in today still, because when you look at the red light district, and the recent data that came out, it says that 75% of the women behind the window are of migrant background. And then we're talking about women from Eastern Europe, definitely, but also a large group of West African women, Dominican women, Afro-Caribbean women, and then there's also a small portion of Southeast Asian women. Not there is also a notion that if a woman, the darker she is, the less you pay for her, which is a horrible thought to think of that. That we're living in 2019. We are connected not only because we have good infrastructure and we can fly. We came over here. We're connected by the internet and all that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of knowledge, and that till this day that we still rate people with a number. We put a price on people based upon the color of their skin. It pains me even to have to say that, to have to admit that. And then there is a whole nother layer even within the women working or being prostituted, that there is, because as a prostituted woman you have to reach a certain quota oftentimes to your pimp or to the brothel owner. So you have to bring a certain amount of money every night. And so what pimps and brothel owners will usually do is how do you say that, create competition between the women. And so there's also a lot of racism and a lot of so-called, how do you say that, separation between the women. And unfortunately what we are seeing within the Netherlands is that oftentimes the Eastern European and specifically the Roma women and women of the skin color that we share, are often most experience the most violence, and that's also because they do not speak the language, they do not understand the infrastructure, they are not aware of their rights within the Netherlands, and then a lot of times they're also afraid to file a report to the police. So the punters or the buyers then are aware of those vulnerabilities and then will also prey specifically on women of color. So I hope that you will, now that you have heard us, that you will also continue this and share this with your friends as well. So.
We have run out of time, but I wanted to plug a few things and note a few things. So you can buy Rachel's book outside, which is now translated to Hungarian. Its title is Kifizetve in Hungarian, paid for. That's one thing. Another thing I wanted to say is that probably most of you were already in agreement when you came here with the abolitionist perspective and goals. But in any case, maybe this event has motivated you to do more and to actually join the movement somehow. You can do that in so many ways. You can just do it by donating to organizations like Space or women's organizations that work on violence against women. And share the materials and share the statements, and when this video is out about this event, share that video. And I also wanted to mention something that we're going to do with the Patent Association, which is the Association of People Opposing Patriarchy, is one of the NGOs that I'm also involved in, and we're going to do. We're now initiating a legal fund for women, where women can apply for legal costs when they have experienced violence against women, and we will also include in the type of applications that we accept fines that prostituted women receive from the police, and when they can't pay it, we want to have them paid. And I just wanted to mention this, especially for the Hungarian audience, that please watch out for this initiative and join us and donate. We'll advertise this on our Facebook page as well. And also, if there are any social workers here tonight, make sure that you watch out for this so that you can recommend it to the women who get into that situation. Yeah, that's all the things that I wanted to plug, I think, and I want to thank you all for speaking. It was so important. Thank you so much.